Welcome back to the Circular Economy Show. I'm Jess.
And I'm Seb. And in today's episode, we're showcasing stories about circular economy innovation in the worlds of regenerative agriculture, finance and tech. In this episode, Holly at Nunwell Farm will be telling us how, together with best friend Francesca, they are trying to bring climate-positive cattle farming to life, right here on the Isle of Wight.
Emily, our finance lead, will be asking Intesa Sanpaolo how they are incentivising businesses to embrace circular business models.
And Jess will be heading to Bordeaux to find out how BackMarket has risen to the top of the French startup unicorns.
So this is going to be a fantastic episode with great stories, but I'm especially excited to be talking about the circular economy startup, BackMarket.
You're going to be something of a circular economy startup encyclopedia by the end of this year, Jess, with all these people you've been visiting. But first, let's explore something with a bit more of a local flavour. We're going to visit Nunwell Farm right here on the Isle of Wight and find out how two entrepreneurs transformed their 125-acre farm with pigs, cattle and chickens into something that was regenerative by design.
If you came to the farm, you'd see we have a herd of belted Galloway cows who are currently grazing on the hilltops, and we have native breed pigs. At the moment, we've got a mixture of Berkshire pigs, saddlebacks, and Tamworths, and we've got a load of native breed chickens for equity. Our outlook when we first took on the farm was to farm totally alongside nature. So our sort of vision for the estate was nature first, and then we sort of built our farming model around what would work to enhance sort of soil health and biodiversity in this landscape. So this piece that we've taken on was sort of conventionally managed for the last 50, 60 years, and so we felt really strongly that we wanted to totally do a sort of full stop on pesticides and herbicide use, and just go straight to managing the farm sort of holistically, and sort of really built our model around sort of a nature first approach. We've been practicing with mob grazing. We haven't got it totally perfect yet. There's lots of limitations that we found to mob grazing when we first starting out. So mob grazing is where you bring your cattle into a tight mob together, and you keep them together using electric fencing and mobile infrastructure, and then you move them on regularly. So a lot of people call it adaptive plan grazing. So you can be a little bit flexible with it. So it's not like you move them every single day or every 3 days. You sort of go with the seasons and how quickly the grass is growing or not growing. And it's a fantastic system. We've had really good results with it, but we're sort of really limited at the moment by infrastructure. So mob grazing takes a huge amount of infrastructure, like water infrastructure and fencing, which all costs a lot of money. So we've only got a finite amount at the moment. So that's sort of limited us to how well we can do our mob grazing. But the bits that we have done and sort of the impact that we've seen has been really, really positive. And we're using mob grazing in a slightly different way in that we're doing long grass grazing. So throughout the summer months, we're trying to keep our grasses long, because when grasses are long, roots are also long. So on grass plants, roots are as long as the tops. So when your grasses are long, you've got all that root mass which is absorbing carbon dioxide and feeding plant roots and feeding all things below the soil, and you're getting maximum photosynthesis. And so that's sort of one reason for keeping those grasses long. But also from a biodiversity perspective, there's so much habitat. Like when you go out into our fields and the grass is short, you can hardly hear a thing. And then you go out and the grass is long and you can just hear sort of hubbub of activity in amongst the grasses. Raising cows in the way that we are can mitigate climate change, because when those cows are being managed properly, or say properly well, those cows can draw down a huge amount of carbon into our soils. So rather than thinking about it like cows are doing all these bad things, you can think about it as a circular system. And so, and even from just a land management perspective, when you're thinking about regenerative, when you're thinking about managing and designing actually your whole farm with a regenerative approach, you're thinking about every single system as a linked system. So you're thinking about putting in hedgerows, and you're thinking about how you're managing your stock, and you're thinking about grasslands, and you're thinking about biodiversity. And so when you have a regenerative outlook, you're not thinking about things in isolation. You're thinking about things as a whole holistic concept. And so I think it's really, regenerative is bandied around a lot at the moment, and it's a real good buzzword, but we have to sort of nail down exactly what it means, and I think it does mean farming for climate as well as farming for animal health and biodiversity and all these other things, but we have to decide exactly what that looks like, especially from an arable perspective. I think it's getting our farming practices right to have the effect that we want to have from a climate perspective. One of the main things that we found a struggle to so far is that a lot of the kind of government grants and things available for either diversification on your farm or just like helping. There's a few grants available for like helping new entry farmers and that sort of thing, but they're all for too much money. Like all the pieces of kit that they say that you can buy are all like, bearing in mind that you have to come up with 60% often of the capital. It's like a £60,000 piece of kit. And so when you're just starting out, and we're starting out on literally a shoestring, they need to think about like really small scale producers and young farmers who haven't come from farming backgrounds and don't necessarily have access to these big lumps of cash. A key thing that government could think about is offering smaller producers smaller amounts of money for especially for things that give exactly the aims and objectives that the government want in terms of doing mob grazing, and it's fantastic for everyone, but it's also fantastic for the local water board and government's climate targets and all these sorts of things. So it's really something that we should be able to get funding for.
So what a fantastic story that was. Thank you so much, Holly. And I am really curious to know how many more farmers will start adopting that vision.
It certainly feels like that is the direction of agriculture. And of course, cattle farming. Most people associate that as being bad for climate change. And we just heard from Holly that actually it can have a net positive effect. We also heard a bit about her challenges, right, Jess, in terms of investment and finance, not always being about how much money a business like that has, but having the right kinds of investment. And our next guest on the show have a bit to say about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be looking at how are companies going to change their business models but continue to make money?
That is exactly the question that Emily from the foundation asked representatives from Intesa Sanpaolo, the Italian bank with a big focus on igniting circular economy innovation.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the CE Show. And the overarching theme that we're discussing today is really around how can we make circular economy business models more accessible and enable businesses to be able to make their climate goals? And finance is obviously a really important enabler of that. And circular economy has been part of the Intesa strategic plan for a number of years. It's been a strategic priority, and I know that as part of that, you have renewed your circular economy credit facility, the plafond, last year for another 8 billion euros. So I wanted to kick off talking a bit about your how you finance circular economy businesses, and what you need from those companies that you give loans to. Gianmarco.
Well, we have a framework and we have a set of information, it's very detailed, that is included in this framework because this, not for all projects, is linked to a credit and incentivization framework where we can provide funds at a lower rate compared to the rate in other inputs that is very important to the counterparty. Therefore, there are a set of rules we have in order to define what is, I think is circular and to finance this.
So companies get a lower rate of interest, so preferential financing, and also if they meet certain circular economy eligibility criteria. Luigi, so what happens when a company comes to you and they don't already meet that criteria? How can you still support them on their circular economy journey?
Speaking specifically of our credit offer, Intesa Sanpaolo, the bank, has set up a team of circular experts called the Circular Economy Desk within the Innovation Center of the banking group. This desk provides technical support to our colleagues in the business units or directly to the client. For example, our technical advisory can be oriented to highlight, let's say, some circular pieces of the sustainability strategy of our clients, as it may be common to find some companies already applying a circular strategy without explicitly calling it circular.
We also have established an ESG advisory team as well as Circular Economy Lab that offers consulting services to our clients that want to start this path. By integrating circular economy principles and offering financial products that can support sustainable practices, we as a bank can not only contribute to climate mitigation, but as well position ourselves as a responsible and forward-thinking institution.
We set a common ground, we open a discussion with our clients where we can also discuss with them about strategy, about business models, in addition to the traditional financial aspect of a loan request.
To transition a business model, you need to invest. It's going to cost money. But how do you see businesses actually transitioning their business model from linear to circular and doing that in a profitable way?
Here we have the real challenge where we are facing some, tough discussion with our clients when you are talking about changing the entire business model.
Even central bank is telling us, if you become circular, it's less risky for the business and for the system as a whole. Of course, it takes time because to go from linear to circular, it takes a lot. It takes a huge investment. It needs to be done in phases. In this case, the answer is let's distinguish the near term. The short term is something that is truly tremendous in terms of target objectives, and longer term, because probably in the shorter term there could be a negative carry in terms of yield, even on the bank side and even on the investor side. But in this case, this is the only way we can make a change.
So, there might be a short-term time when it's more expensive or it costs more and there's that need for investment, but really we need to look at the long term to see the benefits, and we expect those businesses to be lower risk and more resilient and profitable over the longer term. And I think one of the impacts that we could already look at in the shorter term is the link to climate, which I wanted to talk to you about, Christina. Do you see this link to climate in the work that you do between circular economy and climate, and how do you embed that in your long-term strategy?
In our bank, we know very well the nexus between climate and circular economy, and this is also why the circular economy is embedded in our ESG strategy. We are also committed in protecting and restoring natural capital. For example, through a dedicated biodiversity policy we are working on.
In your opinion, is the narrative out there on circular economy clear enough and reaching the right people, and what needs to change?
The main effort in terms of communication, I guess, has been made to change the perception of the circular economy as a recycling topic. The regeneration concept of circular economy foresees that people should borrow materials from the earth and return them with interest. And as with the bank loan, the borrower has to return the capital to the lender, plus a portion of interest that covers the risk that the credit institution has taken in lending that initial capital. This is exactly what should happen in the relationship between humanity and nature. But in reality, we get a loan from the earth and we pay back lost capital and zero interest. I think that continued efforts to educate, engage, and advocate are necessary, okay, and are essential to ensure that this transformational concept becomes more understood and adopted.
I really like that analogy that regeneration is like paying back our loan to planet Earth with interest. I think that's a really, really nice way to think about it. Thank you very much. Really appreciate all of you taking the time to speak to us today.
So thank you to Emily for hosting that conversation for us. So we've heard in this episode that for circular economy innovation to thrive, we need certain conditions in place, policies an obvious one. We've heard quite a bit in this episode about the important role of investment. Another important role is in engaging customers to adapt new business models. And our next story, the story of BackMarket, is a great illustration of that. And our very own Jess has recently visited them, right, Jess?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of months ago, I went down to Bordeaux to meet the team behind one of France's most valuable startups, BackMarket. And we went there to find out how their circular economy business model has been valued to $5.7 billion US. We all know that the climate crisis is one of the biggest challenges we are currently facing. But do we know the impacts created when we manufacture electronics and digital technology? Let's meet one of France's most successful startups and find out how they are tackling this challenge head-on as a native circular economy business.
BackMarket is a marketplace dedicated to the sales of refurbished products. It's been created 8 years ago. It's operating in 17 countries, so in Europe, in the US, and also in Asia now, for the past 2 years. The idea behind BackMarket is to scale the circular economy around tech products, give an alternative to people when they want to consume a tech product, to actually not buy a new product and buy a refurbished or used product.
Today, digital represents 4% of our carbon emission globally. To give you an idea, the plain business is around 3%, so it's even bigger. And 70% of this impact is due to the manufacturing of devices. To give you an idea, like manufacturing a new smartphone is around 84 kilograms of CO2, and refurbishing one is 7 kilograms. And since we exist, since 2014, BackMarket has contributed to avoid 1 million tons of CO2 just by selling computers, tablets, smartphones. So this impact is real, and this impact has been enabled by our customer.
In order to lower those emissions, you need to create less product. There is no other option. And so how do you do that? Well, you have to extend the life of those existing devices as much as possible.
Technical refurbishment isn't new or bespoke to BackMarket. But what this startup has done is create trust in refurbished products by being the marketplace that assures quality.
So the gap that was existing before we created BackMarket for me became clearer. The more I was thinking about the opportunity, the clearer it became. I call it the trust gap.
BackMarket actually creates the condition of the trust between the customer and the refurbishers. So the idea of BackMarket was to actually create the same purchase experience with refurbished that you used to have with new as a customer.
The trust gap is the thing that's missing in the middle of the new world and the used world, and this is where we came to create BackMarket, is to say refurbished is the best combo out of the two worlds. You're saving a lot of money from new, but you also have all the reinsurance that you don't get on the used sides of things. So that combo for me is the key to scale circular economy. And today it's 15% only. We really want to move it to 50 plus and become the new normal, And it's the case for the car market right now.
I'd say we do have like higher quality standards than any other platform or retail refurbisher out there. We probably don't communicate enough on that, and it's a critical game because consumers need to understand that yes, there's an alternative to new, but that alternative is of high quality. But it is a reality. Our standards, especially around battery, are higher than the average or most of our retailers. And funny enough, we do reject a lot of sellers and a lot of supply sellers on our platform. We don't communicate that much about it because that's our internal source. That's how we build quality standards. Consumers don't need to understand that. They don't need to see that. But that's how we're playing that quality game.
So we are ordering from our website to check the quality of the devices that customers are receiving in order to help sellers improving in their quality. So this is where we are testing every devices. We are using software that our sellers are using too. Where here you have the identity card of the device, and then you will test it through an app where you will test every aspect of the device. Here we have the different buttons that you need to activate in order to see if it's working. Here it will vibrate. We can test the different types of cameras, 3 on this one, and check if they're good or not. Here we have the flash, the charging part, the touch screen to see if every part of the screen is touch sensitive or not, which looks pretty good on this one. And then we will test the phone for 30 minutes in order to check the battery on the long run. And if needed, we also have long tests that can be run for 1 week or 2 in order to really test the devices.
BackMarket has already been successful, saving on both CO2 emissions and raw material use. But what's needed to really move the needle further? Thomas and Camille tell us why customer engagement and support from policymakers is imperative.
The fact that we're in here in this battle to really poke the bear and make sure that consumers understand that there's an alternative, and that's something that we can play. And really try to incept the idea that there's an alternative, that this is just marketing, right? It's just a result of 30, 40, 50 years of creating a model of, establishing a new pattern of buying new every year, and that you absolutely need this new phone with that extra 10th camera and this new form factor, right? This is just psychological work in play. You don't need that, and this is a moment where we have immense kind of creative territory to explore.
It's more about how we educate people around the true impact of tech, to make them understand that it's refurbished circular tech is a concrete solution to fight a very problematic issue on the environment. For us, it's very important that repair is the easiest possible and with the greater quality possible, so people will have trust on refurbished devices. So we are trying to act to fight a bit against this planned obsolescence. We work with the main French association on it called HOP, it's like Stop Planned Obsolescence, to raise awareness on this, to try to also push a bit the lawmakers to make them understand why it is so important that we extend the lifespan of the devices we use on our day-to-day life. So we are trying to convince the lawmakers to make laws that actually obligate the constructor to make their device actually repairable in an easy way for everybody.
You can expect us to keep trying as hard as we can to amplify the acceleration of transforming the linear economy of tech product to circular economy.
This idea of a joyful revolution is something we really believe in. It would be very, very easy to be kind of swollen, by how negative or how hard the topic is, right? It's a tough battle to win, if that battle can be won, right? But we have a very deep sense of achieving it through joy, through happiness, through positivity, and that's a strong rallying cry. And I personally believe, and I think we all believe, that if we're able to transmit that in the way we communicate, in the way we show up to the world, we're actually going to have, we're going to make people's life a bit easier and happier, going to have more impact, and we're going to have a lot more fun in the process.
So BackMarket isn't just a big circular economy startup, they're a big startup full stop. And what they're doing is they're fundamentally engaging their customers in a different relationship with their everyday tech products. So who's next on the circular economy startup spotlight's film slate, Jess?
Great question, Seb. So next up on the circular economy startup agenda, we're heading to Mexico City, where we're going to meet up with Trokir, who are a resale marketplace. So be sure to tune in to that.
That's all for this episode of the Circular Economy Show. We hope you enjoyed it.
And keep sending your questions and comments using the hashtag AskTheCEShow.
And get all your updates on the latest news from the Circular Economy Show by following the Ellen MacArthur Foundation across our digital channels. We'll see you next time.